Hello boys and girls, it's Aunty Mimmi here, and today we've got quite a long story. It's a book from many years ago and it's called Well Done Noddy by Enid Blyton. Sounds fun, doesn't it? If you've not already subscribed to the channel, please do so now. Then sit back, get comfortable and let's begin. One fine morning, little Noddy was cleaning his car. He had the hose and he was splashing the water all over the bonnet. He sang as he worked. "Dear little car, you're having a wash. Out comes the water, splishety splosh. Soon you'll be clean and shine like the sun, and off we will go for a nice little run." "You sound very merry and bright, Noddy," said the milkman, coming in at his little gate. Noddy was just going to nod his springy little head when the milkman nodded it for him. He gave it a little tap on the top and set Noddy's head nodding madly. "Yes," said Noddy, nid nodding, as if he would never stop. "Come and look at my lamps, milkman. I saved up for a long time and bought them yesterday." "Wonderful," said the milkman. "You'll shine as bright as the moon when you go out at night. You're a lucky fellow, Noddy. You've got a dear little house and a garage and a fine car and a very good friend too." "You mean Big Ears?" said Noddy. "Yes, he's my very best friend and I'd do anything in the world for him. He's always helping me. Perhaps someday I shall be able to help him." "That's the right way to talk," said the milkman. "Just let me give your head one more nod and I must go." He set Noddy's head nodding again and then off he went, whistling. Noddy began to dry his car, polishing it well. He felt very happy. "Big Ears is coming to dinner," he thought. "I must go out and get him something nice to eat." So off he went in his little car and soon came back with a very large lettuce, 6 big radishes, 2 eggs and 4 jam tarts. But before he had got the dinner ready, somebody came knocking at his little front door. "Noddy, Noddy, quick, open the door." Noddy opened the door. Mrs. Tubby Bear, his next-door neighbour, stood outside looking most alarmed. "Oh, Noddy," she said, "have you heard the news? Poor Big Ears was on his bicycle coming to see you, and round the corner he ran into Jumbo the toy elephant." "Oh dear, what happened?" cried Noddy. "Tell me quickly." "Well, Big Ears fell off and hurt his head, and oh dear, Jumbo sat down on his bicycle," said Mrs. Tubby, 2 big tears running down her furry nose, "and the bicycle is smashed to bits." "What bad news," said Noddy, most upset. "Where's Big Ears? Can I help him? Quick, tell me where he is. He's my friend, you know. He'll want me." "Yes, I know," said Mrs. Tubby. "You go and get him in your little car, Noddy. Then you can bring him back to your house and look after him till he's better. He's still sitting by the roadside." Well, it didn't take Noddy long to jump into his little car and go racing off to get Big Ears. "Dear, dear Big Ears," he thought. "I can't bear him to be hurt. I'm coming, Big Ears, I'm coming." He soon came to the lane where the accident had happened. There was Big Ears sitting on a bench with a big bandage around his head. Sally Skittle had tied it for him. Miss Fluffy Cat was giving him some water to drink. Jumbo was standing up trying to pick up bits of bicycle off himself. He was grumbling hard. "Coming along at 60 miles an hour like that, never ringing his bell, and me with my shopping basket full of eggs. What next? I'd like to know. I'll never be able to pick all these bits of bicycle off." but Noddy couldn't bother with Jumbo. He jumped out of his car and ran to Big Ears. Big Ears, are you all right? Oh, Big Ears, what a fright you gave me. I feel a bit funny, said Big Ears, and, oh, my poor little bicycle, it's smashed to bits. Take me home with you, please, Noddy. Oh, I am glad to see you. There was Big Ears sitting on the bench with a big bandage round his head. So Noddy and Miss Fluffy Cat helped poor Big Ears into the car. Sally Skittle stayed behind to help Jumbo. I keep ringing somewhere whenever I move, complained Jumbo. Why do I? Sally Skittle gave a squeal of laughter. Well, you've got the bicycle bell on your tail, she said. Each time your tail moves, the bell rings. I'll take it off. Jumbo went on grumbling. Sally Skittle looked at all the bits and pieces of the bicycle. She threw them into the ditch out of the way. Oh, what a pity, she said. Whatever will Big Ears do now? What a good thing he has got Noddy for a friend. Chapter 2. Big Ears has some worries. Noddy drove very carefully so that Big Ears wouldn't be jerked about. At last they got home and Noddy helped his friend out of the car. Now, you shall stay with me till you're better, he said. You've so often helped me, Big Ears. It's my turn to help you. Well, Big Ears was soon in Noddy's bed. He had on a pair of Noddy's pyjamas, but he couldn't do up the buttons because he was fatter than Noddy. You look queer with your bandages on and no hat, said Noddy. Do you mind if I put your hat on top of the bandages, Big Ears? You'll look more yourself. The doctor soon came. He was a tall teddy bear with glasses on. He wore a top hat, which made him seem rather grand. Noddy was rather scared of him. Keep your friend in bed, said Mr. Dr. Bear. Don't let him worry. That's very important. He must not worry. Good day, little Noddy. Well, it was all very well to say that Noddy mustn't let Big Ears worry. How could he stop him? Big Ears worried about his little toadstool house. Someone may get in and steal my things, he said. It worries me to think about it. It's all alone and empty. I'll see if somebody will go and look after it for you, said Noddy. So he asked Mrs. Tubby for her advice. I believe Sally Skittle would stay in it. Okay. Someone may get in and steal my things, he said. It worries me to think about it. It's all alone and empty. I'll see if somebody will go and look after it for you, said Noddy. So he asked Mrs. Tubby for her advice. I believe Sally Skittle would stay in it till Big Ears is better, said Mrs. Tubby. I know she is having her tiny house painted, and she doesn't like the smell of the paint. You go and ask her. Well, Sally Skittle was very pleased, especially as Noddy said she could have her 3 tiny Skittle children there as well. They packed up their bags and set off all at once. They soon settled in, and Sally Skittle set her children to work to weed the garden, clean the windows, and beat the mats. So that was one worry gone. Then Big Ears began to worry about his cat. Sally Skittle's children might tease her, he said. I do wish I had old Whiskers here. She'll be so lonely without me. It worries me. Oh, Big Ears, the doctor said you weren't to worry, said Noddy, his head nodding fast. I'll go and fetch Whiskers. We'll have her here. She's nice. I like her. So he fetched Whiskers in his car, and Whiskers sat beside Big Ears all day and purred so loudly that it sounded like a song. I know what she's singing when she purrs, said Noddy, and he sang Whiskers' song. Stroke me please because I'm furry, pet me please because I'm purry. You won't hear a single mew, but all day long I'll purr for you. Purr, 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 purr. Big Ears laughed when Noddy sang all that in a purring voice. But then his whiskered face grew sad again, and Noddy looked at him in alarm. Big Ears, you've thought of another worry. I know you have. Whatever is it this time? No, I shan't tell you, said Big Ears, and he turned his head away. It's too big a worry, and I'm afraid that even you can't do anything about it, Noddy. I shan't be happy till you tell me, said Noddy. So Big Ears told him, and it certainly was a very big worry. Chapter 3. Noddy Gets an Idea. It's about my bicycle, said Big Ears. It's all smashed to bits, and I'm sure it can't be mended, can it? Noddy shook his head sadly. No, it can't, Big Ears. Mr. Tubby collected all the bits he could find, but you see, Jumbo is so heavy that he just flattened everything out when he sat on the bicycle. Well, that's my very big worry, said Big Ears. You see, I've no money saved up, Noddy, so I can't buy a new one. And I live so far away in the wood that I really must have a bicycle to ride on to do my shopping. Yes, you must, said Noddy, looking very gloomy indeed. And oh, Big Ears, I've no money either. I did have some saved up, but I used it all to buy new lamps with. I think I've got a halfpenny in my money box, but that's all. He got his money box, and out came the halfpenny. That was all there was. But don't you worry now, said Noddy. I'll think of all sorts of good ideas to get some money to buy you a new bicycle. Big Ears, I really will. But it wasn't easy to think of good ideas. Noddy sat on his chair and thought till he fell asleep. And fell off his chair too. Oh dear, how did people think of good ideas? Well, the next day, Noddy did have a good idea. He passed by Mr. Wobbly Man's garden and saw the Wobbly Man hard at work there. What are you doing? Called Noddy, leaning over the fence. I'm planting beans, said Mr. Wobbly. It's a bit difficult because I can't bend over properly. But I do an extra big wobble and plant a bean at each wobble. Do the beans grow into bean plants? Asked Noddy, who really didn't know very much yet. Oh yes, and they will grow beans in pods and I shall sell them, said Mr. Wobbly. I sell my plums too. I planted a plum stone once, and look what a fine plum tree it grew into. Noddy looked at the plum tree, which was full of blossom. What a wonderful thing! You just planted a bean or a stone and it grew into something that gave you thousands of things like itself. Noddy went off, thinking hard. Why couldn't he grow something like that? He came to the sweet shop and looked in at the window. He always liked looking into the sweet shop window. It was full of such exciting things. Peppermint drops, ooh, said Noddy. Big bullseyes, ooh, and toffees. I wish I had some money. I would take some home to Big Ears. It might make him forget his worry. And then a marvellous idea came into Noddy's head, and he nodded so hard that the bell on the end of the hat rang a loud jingy tune. I will buy a peppermint drop and a bullseye and a toffee, he said to himself, and I will plant them and grow a peppermint drop bush and a bullseye's tree and a toffee tree too, and I can sell them when they are sweet and ripe and buy a new bicycle for Big Ears. Well, what a wonderful idea! Noddy went home and got the halfpenny out of his money box. The sweet shop woman, who was a very nice little doll, let him have 1 peppermint drop, 1 bullseye, and 1 toffee for the halfpenny. Noddy planted them in the garden and put a label by each one. This was a fine way to make some money for Big Ears. Chapter 4. Noddy is clever. The queer seed didn't come up the next day or the next. Noddy kept looking to see. He asked Big Ears how long seeds took to grow. A few weeks, said Big Ears, and Noddy looked sad. He didn't want Big Ears to have his great big worry all that time. He must think of another good idea as quickly as possible. Perhaps I could make up a song and sell it, he thought. Big Ears says I'm good at songs. I'll go round asking people if they would like me to make up a nice song about them. I could charge 6pence a time. Well, Mr. Tubby Bear said he would like a song, so long as Noddy didn't say anything in it about how fat he was. Noddy sat down, his bell jingling, and thought about a Tubby song. At last he thought of one. Here it is. Mr. Tubby Bear has got a lovely grunt. He keeps it in his middle. You press him just in front. I couldn't call him thin, but I mustn't call him fat. And I like him best of all when he wears his Sunday hat. Noddy took it round to Mr. Tubby Bear. Is it worth 6pence? He asked. I did my very best. Mr. and Mrs. Tubby read it together. It does rather sound as if I was fat, says Mr. Tubby doubtfully. I like the bit about my lovely grunt, though. He pressed himself in his middle, and a deep grunt came at once. That was clever of you to put my grunt into a song, Noddy. But what do you mean about my Sunday hat? I haven't got one. I know, said Noddy. It just came into the song by itself. But you would look nice in a fine Sunday hat, Mr. Tubby, and I would like you very much in one. I know I would. Well, I might buy one then, said Mr. Tubby. I think the song is worth 6pence, so I'll pay you for it. Sing it to me first, though, so that I shall know the tune. So Noddy sang it in his little high voice, his head nodding in time to the tune. I shall certainly tell everyone you are a good song-maker, said Mr. Tubby. Then perhaps you will get some more money. So he told Miss Toy Bunny, and the next day Miss Bunny came to see Noddy. I'd like a song too, she said, her little nose waffling up and down, but only a very short one, because my memory is short and I couldn't learn a long one. It will be 6pence, said Noddy, and Miss Bunny paid him even before he had thought of her song. He sang her the song the next minute, though, so she didn't have to wait long. This is what he sang. Waffly nose and hoppity feet, little Miss Bunny is perfectly sweet. Miss Bunny was simply delighted. She went off singing it, and it wasn't long before Noddy became quite famous for his songs. Soon he had written one for Mr. Wobbly Man, one for Miss Fluffy Cat, one for Sally Skittle, and even one for Jumbo. That took him a long time, though, because Jumbo said he ought to have a big song because he was so enormous. His money box began to get full. If only his peppermint seeds would grow, and his bullseyes and toffees. What a lot of money he would have. Noddy felt very pleased. I'll soon buy a bicycle for Big Ears, he thought. Very, very soon. Chapter 5. A Message for Noddy. Big Ears was much better. He was up now, and sitting in a rocking chair that Mrs. Tubby Bear had lent him. He still wore a bandage round his head, but it was a much smaller one. What I should really like would be a ride on my dear old bicycle, he kept saying. But it's all gone, isn't it, Noddy? Yes, I'm afraid so, said Noddy. All except the bell, Big Ears. Sally Skittle brought it back, and I've put it away in a cupboard, because I thought it might make you sad to see it. Bring it out, said Big Ears. I don't like it hidden away. Put it near me, and I'll ring it sometimes. It will remind me of my dear old bicycle. So Noddy got out the bell and put it beside Big Ears. It still rang beautifully, and whenever Big Ears wanted his little Noddy for anything, he rang his old bicycle bell. Ring! Noddy often took passengers in his little car, but he couldn't save much money for the sixpences they gave him because it cost rather a lot to keep Big Ears as well as himself. And I keep buying Big Ears all sorts of little treats to keep him happy, thought Noddy. Ice creams and rosy apples and a nice book. I should really be saving the money up for his new bicycle. Oh dear, shall I ever get enough to take him shopping and buy a bicycle just like his old one? One day he got a message that was rather exciting. Mrs. Tubby brought it. Somebody met me when I was out, little Noddy, she said. It was a messenger from Mr. Sailor Doll. He says he's going to sea tomorrow, so will you please drive to his house called Ahoy Cottage. Go round to the back where there is a shed and collect all the sacks there. Put them in your car and take them to Red Goblin Corner. Very well, said Noddy. What do I do with them there? Oh, you just leave them for his uncle to collect sometime, said Mrs. Tubby. Put them under a bush. You will be paid 7 sixpences for doing all that. Good gracious me, said Noddy, pleased. I shall be very, very rich. I shall put them all into my money box. Noddy set off in his little car. He drove to Ahoy Cottage. It was really rather like a steamer, and it had funnels for chimneys. But as roses grew all round the funnels, they looked a bit peculiar. Noddy went straight round to the back of the cottage. He found the shed. He went in and saw 6 sacks piled up together, waiting for him. He dragged them one by one to his little car. At last he had got them all in. Nobody came out to pay him, so he thought perhaps Mr. Sailor Doll had left to go to sea. Somebody was hanging out clothes in the next garden. It was Mrs. Minnie Monkey. Noddy didn't know her, so he didn't say a word to her. He just got into his car and drove off to Red Goblin Corner. Nobody was there, so Noddy dragged the sacks out of his car and put them under a big bush. There, now he had done his job. He would send in the bill to Mr. Sailor Doll and get a great deal of money. I might almost have enough to pay for a new bicycle now, he thought, and he drove off at top speed. He got a passenger on the way back, a little toy horse who had just a long tail that it hung down right over the back of the car. It might get caught in the wheels, said Noddy anxiously. Can't you tie it round your neck or something? That's not the way to treat tails like mine, said the toy horse, offended. All right, let it sweep the road clean if you want it to, said Noddy. Here we go. Chapter 6. Visitors at Night. Now that night there came a knocking at the door. Rat-a-tat-tat. It sounded a very cross kind of knocking, and it made Noddy and Big Ears jump. Who's that? Said Big Ears, surprised. It's very late for a visitor. I hope it's not anyone who wants to take him out in your car, Noddy. Noddy opened the door. The bell on his hat jingled in fright because the knocking had sounded very fierce. Oh dear, there was Mr. Plod, the policeman, outside, and with him were the sailor doll and Mrs. Minnie Monkey, who lived next door to him. They all looked very cross indeed. They came right in, and the sailor doll slammed the door. "Noddy," said Mr. Plod, "I should just like to know what you have been up to today." "I don't know, tell me," said Noddy, trembling. "Did you or did you not go to Io's cottage today and steal 6 sacks from Mr. Sailor Doll's shed?" asked Mr. Plod, very solemnly, taking out his big black notebook as he spoke. "I did go to his shed, but I didn't steal the sacks," said Noddy. "Oh, the naughty little storyteller," cried Mrs. Monkey. "He came when Mr. Sailor Doll was out, and I saw him dragging the sacks out of the shed. Oh, the bad little fellow. Well, Mr. Sailor Doll sent me a message to take them out of his shed and drive to Red Goblin Corner and leave them there for his uncle," cried Noddy. "Oh, I didn't," said the Sailor Doll. I didn't. "That's enough, didn't," said Mr. Plod. "I'm handling this, if you please. Noddy, I'm surprised at you, making up a story like this. What have you done with the sacks? Are they here?" Big Ears suddenly rang the bicycle bell beside him, very loudly indeed. It made everyone jump, and they all looked around. "Let me speak," said Mr. Big Ears angrily. "How dare you call little Noddy names? How dare you say he steals things? How dare you say that?" "Be quiet," said Mr. Plod crossly. "I shan't be quiet," yelled Big Ears, and his bandage suddenly slipped down over one eye. "Mrs. Tubby gave Noddy the message about fetching the sacks. I heard her. Fetch her in." Mr. Plod sent Mrs. Minnie Monkey to fetch Mrs. Tubby. Mrs. Tubby came too, looking very surprised. "Well, of course," Mrs. Tubby said that she had given Noddy the message. A little red goblin had met her out in the village and had told her to ask Noddy to fetch the sacks. "It's a plot," cried the Sailor Doll. "That's what it is, a plot to steal my carrots and my turnips and my potatoes and my swedes and my onions and my, well, I can't really remember what was in the 6th sack." "Your good manners, perhaps," cried Big Ears, very red in the face. "Coming to our house like this and telling stories about Noddy and—" "Shush," said Mr. Plod, flapping his notebook at Big Ears. "I tell you, I'm handling this case. The thing is, Noddy took the sacks and he's to blame. Noddy, I'm afraid you must pay 15 shillings to Mr. Sailor Doll this very minute. He's got to go to sea tomorrow and he wants the money. He can't sell his sacks of vegetables now because they're gone." Noddy wailed loudly. "But it wasn't my fault. I did a lot of hard work and now I'm blamed for it and I've got to pay out of my money that I was saving up. Whoa." "Well, don't pay it then," said Mr. Plod. "But if you don't, I'm afraid I must take you to prison for the night till this matter is cleared up." "Pay the money. Don't go to prison, Noddy," cried Big Ears. "I can't do without you, little Noddy. I can't. So poor little Noddy had to give up every penny in his money box to the Sailor Doll. Then Mr. Plod went away with the doll and Mrs. Monkey. Noddy cried bitterly. Big Ears comforted him. He whispered in his ear, "Noddy, take your car and see if you can catch the thief at Red Goblin Corner. He may be coming at night to get the sacks. Go and catch him." Chapter 7. Noddy is very brave. Noddy dried his eyes. He suddenly felt very fierce. "I'll catch him all right," he said. "You just see." And off he went in his car, his new lamps shining very brightly indeed. But when he got to Red Goblin Corner, he switched them off and jumped out. He crept over to the bush where he had hidden the sacks. Dear me, the sacks were still there. How marvellous! Was the thief coming to get them? If so, Noddy would jump out at him and give him the surprise of his life. Noddy hid under the bush. He had taken a rope from his car. He took off his hat so that the bell wouldn't tinkle and give him away. He waited and he waited. Shh, what's that? A little noise, and another little noise, and then a bigger noise. Then someone put a hand under the bush to feel if the sacks were there. Noddy pounced. He caught the hand and leapt out of the bush. He dragged the person to his car and switched on the headlights. Good gracious, he said, astonished. It's Sly the Goblin. So it was you who played this horrid trick on me. He suddenly caught hold of the goblin's other hand. He tied both hands together with the rope. The goblin was a coward and he fell on his knees at once. Mercy, don't take me away with you. Don't take me to Mr. Plod. It was only a joke. I'll tell you it was only a joke. Oh, a joke was it? said Noddy fiercely. Well, I nearly went to prison for your joke, and I've had to give up every penny out of my money box for your nasty joke. I've a good mind to tie you behind my car and drag you all the way to Mr. Plod. No, 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 squealed Sly. Or else I'll tie you on the front and drive straight into the pond, said Noddy, enjoying himself. No, 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 squealed the goblin again. Noddy, I'm sorry. Don't punish me. You've got the sacks, haven't you? You can take them back. Yes, but I've given every penny of my money to the sailor doll, and he's going to sea, so I shan't get it back, said Noddy. And I'm sure Mr. Plod won't let me sell what's in the sacks. No, no, I think I'll certainly punish you. Please, wept the goblin. Please listen to me. Let me do a spell for you. I'm good at spells. Isn't there anything you want? Nothing, said Noddy, but then he suddenly stopped and thought. Wait a minute. There was something he wanted, and wanted very badly too. Have you a spell to make a bicycle exactly like the one that Big Ears used to ride? He asked. Big Ears' bicycle was smashed to bits, said Sly. If I had one of the bits, I might work a spell on it to grow a bicycle just like Big Ears used to have. But not a bit was left, so people say. There is something left of it, cried Noddy. The bell's left. Get into my car, Sly. I'll take you straight back, and if you can really work a bicycle spell, I'll forgive you, and I'll let you go. Get in. I'm just going to put the sacks in the car too. So into the car got Sly and Goblin, trembling so much that the car shook too. How frightened he was of fierce little Noddy. Chapter 8. The Wonderful Spell. Noddy put all the sacks, and some of them went on top of Sly, who didn't like it at all. But he really didn't dare to say a word. Then off they went and soon came to Noddy's little house. Noddy dragged Sly out of the car and rushed him up to the front door. He opened it and in they went. Big Ears leapt up in a surprise. What's this? Who's that? You made me jump. Where's your bicycle bell? Cried Noddy, so excited that he really couldn't answer any questions. Oh, there it is. Big Ears watched. Something wonderful may be going to happen. Noddy put the bell down in front of Sly. He pointed at it. Now, what about that spell? Go on, do it, or off to Mr. Plod you go. Sly touched the bell with his foot. Then he leapt lightly round it. He chanted a curious little song. Bell, bell, I weave you a spell, bicycle magic is in it. Grow, grow, 2 wheels in a row, it won't take you more than a minute. Make, pedals and brake, tyres and handlebars too. Bell, bell, I weave you a spell, hula-bee, reena-bee, hoo. The last hoo was so loud that Noddy and Big Ears jumped, and Whiskers the cat fled under the bed. But my goodness me, what a spell that was. The bicycle grew under their very eyes. Yes, it grew wheels and bars and pedals and brake, fat tyres, and even a big lamp in front. Big Ears rushed to it in the greatest delight. He leapt on it. He began to cycle round and round the room, almost knocking little Noddy down. My bicycle's all right again. It's just the very same, except that the lamp is bigger. Where's my bell? I'll put it on. There now, I can ring it too. Ring, ring, ring. What an excitement there was. Noddy was simply delighted to see that Big Ears was quite himself again. He danced up and down and sang. At last Big Ears got off the bicycle and looked at Noddy, panting. Where's that goblin? He said. I'll just give him 1 or 2 spanks for luck. But Sly had gone. He had slipped out quietly and was running as if 100 dogs were after him. Dear, dear, to think that he had nearly been taken off to Mr. Plod. Mr. and Mrs. Tubby heard the bicycle bell ringing madly as Big Ears raced round the room again, with Noddy on his back this time. They came to see what the matter was. How pleased they were. Big Ears threw his bandages into the fire. Noddy took off his hat and rang the bell loudly in joy. Everything's come right, he said. Well, not quite everything. He suddenly looked solemn. What hasn't come right? Asked Big Ears. Well, I planted a peppermint drop, a bullseye, and a toffee, said Noddy. Out in the garden, you know. I thought they'd grow into lovely little trees and I'd be able to sell the sweets that grow on them. Just like Mr. Wobbly sells the plums off his plum tree, but they didn't come up. Oh, you dear funny little Noddy, cried Mrs. Tubby, and she gave him a hug. You silly, generous little fellow, said Mr. Tubby. Best friend in the world, said Big Ears, and smiled all over his big red face. Who cares what happens so long as we've got one another? Hooray for little Noddy! And dear me, Big Ears suddenly burst into a little song, just as Noddy often did. Who is the best of all of us? Answer everybody. Someone very shy and small. Why, it's little Noddy. He is, with hat of blue, bell a-jingling all day through, smiling funny smiles at you. Hullo, little Noddy. Well, wasn't that nice? Noddy was so pleased that he rushed at Big Ears and nearly knocked him off his bicycle as he rode round and round the room. Funny little Noddy. See you again sometime. Well, that was a wonderful little book, wasn't it, boys and girls? I hope you have enjoyed the story of Well Done Noddy. As always, I want you to be kind to one another, look after one another, and try and have some fun every single day. Until next time, bye-bye.